The transmission crackled through the void, carried on subspace frequencies that had been silent for decades. Admiral Helena Cross stood in a command center of the UES Defiance, her weathered hands gripping the console as the alien voice filled the bridge with cold arrogance. Primitive Earth vessels, you have entered Dominion space without authorization. Your pathetic fleet of 47 ships will surrender immediately or be annihilated. We are the Hegemony. We do not negotiate with inferior species. The bridge fell silent. Cross's gray eyes, hardened by 30 years of deep space patrol, reflected the star field beyond the viewport. Around her, officers waited for orders that would determine humanity's fate. The Hegemony had arrived 3 months ago, claiming every inhabited system within 100 light-years. 27 colonies had already fallen. Earth was next. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Torres whispered from the communications station. "They're broadcasting our fleet composition across all frequencies. Calling us insects, laughing at our technology." Cross didn't respond immediately. She studied the tactical display where 3,000 Hegemony warships formed a perfect battle formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields that pulsed like heartbeats. Each vessel was 3 times larger than Earth's largest dreadnought. Their weapons could crack planets. But they didn't know about Project Lazarus. "Signal the fleet," Cross said quietly. "Execute Protocol 7. Torres hesitated. "Ma'am, Protocol 7 is experimental. We've never tested it in actual combat. Today we find out if 10 years of preparation was worth it," Cross replied, her voice steady as granite. "Send the signal." The Hegemony fleet commander, Overlord Thane, watched the pathetic human formation with barely concealed disgust. 47 ships against 3,000. It wasn't a battle, it was pest control. The humans hadn't even powered their weapons. "This is almost insulting," he growled to his tactical officer. "Their largest vessel is smaller than our scouts. How did such a weak species even achieve interstellar travel? Shall we begin the attack, Overlord?" Thane leaned back in his command throne, mandibles clicking with amusement. "Wait. Let them make the first move. I want to see what desperate trick these mammals attempt before we vaporize them." On the Defiance, Cross watched her chronometer count down. 10 seconds until Protocol 7 activated. She thought of her daughter Sarah, stationed on Earth's orbital defense platforms. Of her grandson Marcus, who'd never known a galaxy where humanity wasn't under threat. Of the billions sleeping peacefully, unaware that their existence hung by a thread in the cold void. 5 seconds. "All stations report ready," came the calm voice of Commander Hayes from engineering. "Lazarus systems are online. God help us all." 3 seconds. Cross closed her eyes briefly, remembering the classified briefings. The warnings. The ethical debates that had raged for years in the highest levels of Earth's government. What they were about to do would change everything. 1 second. Execute. The transformation was instant and terrifying. 47 human vessels suddenly multiplied. Not through holographic projection or sensor ghosts, but through technology so advanced it bent the laws of physics into new shapes. Each ship became a dozen, then 100, then 1,000. Space around Earth's fleet erupted in a cascade of identical vessels, all solid, all real, all armed. In 30 seconds, Earth's 47 ships had become 470,000. Overlord Thane's mandibles snapped shut so hard they nearly broke. His tactical display screamed warnings as sensor readings flooded the bridge with impossible data. The human fleet hadn't just grown, it had become a metal storm that stretched across 3 star systems. "How?" he whispered, but his tactical officer was too busy trying to make sense of readings that defied every known law of warfare. On the Defiance, Cross felt the familiar tug of dimensional displacement as Protocol 7 reached full activation. The bridge around her flickered, existing simultaneously in multiple quantum states. She was one woman commanding one ship, but also 10,000 women commanding 10,000 ships, each slightly different, each equally real. Dimensional multiplication successful, Hayes reported, his voice echoing strangely through folded space. We're operating across 10,000 parallel timelines simultaneously. All versions of the fleet are combat ready. Cross nodded, though the motion felt strange when performed by thousands of versions of herself. Signal the hegemony. All frequencies. Her voice, when it came, seemed to speak from everywhere at once. 10,000 Admiral Crosses, speaking in perfect unison across dimensions humanity had learned to navigate. Overlord Thane. You called us weak. You threatened our children. You demanded our surrender. The words carried the weight of infinite variations, possibilities that stretched across parallel realities where humanity had faced this moment in countless ways. We decline. The attack began without warning or mercy. Earth's multiplied fleet moved like a single organism, 470,000 ships coordinating across dimensional barriers with precision that made the hegemony's formation look clumsy by comparison. They struck from every angle simultaneously, weapons firing from positions that shouldn't have been possible, targeting weak points that existed in multiple realities at once. Thane's flagship, the Annihilator, took hits from weapons that seemed to fire through solid matter. His shields, designed to deflect the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy, simply couldn't process attacks coming from folded spacetime. Return fire, he roared, but his weapons officers were staring at targeting systems that couldn't lock onto enemies existing in quantum superposition. Sir, they're everywhere and nowhere. Our computers can't process their positions. A human destroyer, one of thousands, materialized directly inside the Annihilator's shield perimeter. Its guns, small by hegemony standards, punched through armor that had never been breached. The destroyer vanished back into dimensional fold space before return fire could touch it. This happened 50,000 times in the span of 10 seconds. Cross watched the battle unfold across multiple timelines, her consciousness expanded to process information from thousands of parallel engagements. In some realities, individual hegemony ships fought back effectively. In others, they were destroyed before they could respond. But averaged across all possibilities, the outcome was becoming clear. The hegemony had never faced an enemy that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ma'am, Hayes called out, strain evident in his voice. Dimensional stability is holding, but the power requirements are enormous. We can maintain this for maybe 20 minutes before the reactors overload. That's 15 minutes longer than we'll need, Cross replied grimly. She was right. The hegemony formation, once proud and unstoppable, was dissolving into chaos. Ships collided with each other trying to avoid attacks from impossible angles. Communication systems failed as dimensional interference scrambled their frequencies. Worst of all, their commanders couldn't adapt to fighting an enemy that existed in quantum superposition. Overlord Thane, his flagship burning and listing, finally understood what they faced. These humans hadn't just developed better weapons or shields. They had transcended the normal rules of combat entirely. Retreat, he ordered, but even retreat was impossible. Human ships appeared in front of his fleeing vessels, behind them, sometimes occupying the same space and firing from within their hulls. In 18 minutes, the battle was over. Of 3,000 hegemony warships, exactly 0 remained combat effective. Most were destroyed, the rest crippled and drifting. The proud alien fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds had been obliterated by humans they dismissed as primitive insects. As Protocol 7 powered down, Earth's fleet condensed back into 47 ships, their hulls scarred but intact. Cross felt her consciousness collapse back into a single timeline, the sensation both relieving and profoundly lonely after experiencing existence across multiple realities. "Casualties?" she asked quietly. "Minimal," Torres reported, amazement clear in her voice. "We lost 3 ships across all timelines, but most versions of them survived in parallel dimensions. Actual loss of life is under 50 personnel." Cross nodded, then activated the communication system. She was done with being underestimated. "Attention, surviving Hegemony forces. I am Admiral Helena Cross of the United Earth Fleet. You came to our space expecting to find a weak species ripe for conquest. Instead, you found something you didn't expect." She paused, letting her words carry across the debris field that had once been their mighty armada. Humans who refuse to be victims. Humans who will sacrifice everything to protect their children. Humans who have spent decades preparing for threats like you. The signal reached across the galaxy, carried by Hegemony communication relays to every world under their control. Consider this a lesson. Earth is not weak. We are not primitive. We are not your prey. We are the species that learn to fight in dimensions you can't even perceive. We are the ones who will come for you if you threaten our people again. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "Set course for Earth. Time to go home." But the victory came with a price Cross hadn't anticipated. As the fleet began its journey back to Earth, reports started filtering in from other sectors. The Hegemony wasn't the only threat humanity faced. The battle had been monitored by a dozen other alien civilizations, some friendly, others decidedly not. "Ma'am," Torres said carefully, "we're receiving transmissions from the Collective, the Star Empire, and the Federation Alliance. They all want to know about Protocol 7. Cross felt a chill that had nothing to do with the void of space. Humanity had revealed its greatest secret to protect itself, but in doing so, they'd painted a target on their backs that would never fade. "What are they saying?" "The friendly ones want an alliance. They're offering technology, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts." Torres hesitated. "The others are talking about preemptive strikes. They're calling us a dimensional threat that needs to be contained." Cross stared out at the stars, each one representing civilizations that now knew humanity could exist in multiple realities simultaneously. Some would want to learn from them. Others would want to destroy them before they became too dangerous. "Signal Earth Command," she said finally. "Tell them we won the battle, but the real war is just beginning." 6 months later, Cross stood in the same command center, watching a very different kind of fleet approach Earth. Not invaders this time, but a delegation representing 43 species from across the galaxy. Some came seeking alliance, others demanding explanations, a few clearly planning treachery. The humans had been right to fear revealing Protocol 7. In defeating the Hegemony, they'd announced to the galaxy that a new power had emerged, one capable of fighting in dimensions most species couldn't even imagine. But they'd also learned something else. They weren't alone in pushing the boundaries of physics. The Collective had ships that existed partially in subspace. The Star Empire had mastered temporal manipulation. The Keth had learned to weaponize black holes. Every species had been hiding their ultimate weapons, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. Now they all stared at each other across the negotiating table, each knowing the others had capabilities that could reshape reality itself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cross said to the assembled delegates, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had stared into the abyss and emerged victorious. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what we're all really capable of. The Galactic Cold War had begun. And humanity, the species once dismissed as weak and primitive, now sat at the center of it all, their 47 ships somehow more dangerous than fleets 1,000 times larger. Because they had learned the most important lesson of all. In a universe full of predators, the greatest weapon isn't size or strength. It's the willingness to become something your enemies can't understand. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia realized they were no longer the apex predators they believed themselves to be. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of dimensional warfare had begun. And Earth, weak little Earth with its pathetic fleet of 47 ships, had fired the first shot.